Hello there, my name's Joe and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to take a look at the MaraScott AnyBus node. What we'll do is we'll look at how we can install this and bring it onto our workflow and then use it to create two tasks. One is an image to image and then also a masking task. Once we've done that, we'll just take a very quick look at how we can tidy up our workflow using link render modes in ComfyUI. So to install the ComfyUI MaraScott nodes, all we need to do is go to Manager, install custom nodes, come up to the search box, and if we just start typing in Mara, M-A-R-A, press return, you'll see here the MaraScott nodes. So install those and restart ComfyUI, and then we'll be ready to move on. So to add the AnyBus node to your workflow, simply what I do is I just double click on an empty space, get the search box up, and I type AnyBus and select the top option. There we go. So that's the node in its default color. I've got two instances here, which you can see I've colored white, and I've already made the connection, so you can see how this is now building up. You can, of course, interlace these buses, and if you want to, so you just go from the bus connection to the bus connection, and when you do that, it will then take on all the connections from the previous instance. So just to demo that, if I take this bus connection here and hook it up to that, we've now got the same as these two instances here. Only difference being at the moment now is that this one is green. We can, if we want, we can control the how many connections we want on this bus by increasing or decreasing the number of inputs here. So at the moment we have 10 inputs. Okay, so don't need this one now, so I'm just now going to delete this one before we move on. So before we look at the AnyBus node, let's just have a quick look at the inputs that we'll be using. So on the left hand side, so we've got our load checkpoint, and we're going to be using the modern Disney XL model today. I've got a clip set last layer node, so I can set clip skip, which is set to -2. I've also got a Lora loader, and I've added a Add Detail XL Lora, so I've added that as well. And below that we have the load image, which is the image that we're going to be using for both the tasks, both the image to image and the masking task. So if we come back up to the top here, we've got, and look at the inputs and outputs. So we've got the model. So the model output from the load checkpoint, that comes down to the model input on the load Lora. That then feeds as an output onto the AnyBus. So our first connection there is the model, and that's coming from the load Lora. Next, we've got two clips, which will be the, if we follow the clip that started with the checkpoint loader, that has come down to the input on the clip. From the output of the clip, that's also then come down to the input of the load Lora, and the output clip has come across now. I've connected that to the AnyBus, and I've made two connections there, one for the positive and one for the negative. So that's the first three connections. Then I know that we'll need a VAE from here, so I've created a VAE connection, which will connect to the VAE encode over here. Now, that then just leaves us on this top group, really. We've got the donor image, which is this node down here that we're using, and we'll be using this node for both these tasks. So number 5, where we see image, that's the load image here. Now, to make this easier for me to understand, number 6, I've just left blank just so I can separate these connections. And I know now that anything after 6 refers to the bottom group here. So number 7, I have mask, and there is a mask connection that I need to use because we've got a mask connection here on this particular task. So number 7 is mask. 8 and 9 are clips again, because I've had to add, and for my masking, I've had to add 2 more text boxes for that. And again, just to finish off, we need a separate VAE. I can't use this one. We need a separate VAE, which will just refer to this bottom task here. And that's about it. And so I think, as I mentioned earlier, any changes I make to either one of these instances, because they're interlaced, will immediately be reflected in the other instance. So they will always look identical while they are interlaced. You can, of course, use this AnyBus isolated if you want. So that's roughly what we're going to do. Let's now just take a quick look at the 2 tasks that we're going to do, i.e. the image to image and the masking. So now let's look at the output connections from the AnyBus node on our image to image setup. So first of all, we have here the output model. That's going to come across to model on the K-sampler. As always, we've got the 2 clip connections, one for positive, one for negative. And we've got the output VAE, which is going to go to the VAE input on the VAE encode. And then below that, we have the image, which is this donut image here. So what we're hoping to get is we have this donut image, and we have this prompt here, which is basically asking for an attractive Indian lady wearing a Christmas jumper with a sort of a Christmassy background type thing. I've put into a negative prompt. I don't normally use negative prompts, but I've tried to, I want to get away from the result having a red dot on the forehead if I can. I believe that's called a bindi. So I've put in, but I'm not quite sure whether or not the model know what a bindi is. So I've put in bindi or red dot on forehead, trying to eliminate that, and we'll see what happens. Okay, and the K-sampler, I've just used a fixed seed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are, as I said earlier, Modern Disney XL model. I'm using 30 steps and a CFG of 5. Sampler is DPM PP++, 2M SDE, the Keras scheduler. And I'm using a denoise here of 0.55. Okay, and then the K-sampler goes into the VAE decode, and then we've got our save image. And I've given the save image, I've given that a prefix of image to image, so I can separate it from the results of what we've seen down here on the next task, which I've called mask, but we'll look at that in a second. So that's the setup for the first task. Now let's just take a quick look at the setup for the masking task. So now we just take a look at the masking task. So our model output goes from here. So we're not having to make a connection from the top instance, which is nice. So this is what these buses are all about. So model comes down to our K-sampler, come down here. I think I may have made a mistake with the VAE. This connection here doesn't look right to me. I think we should be using this one down here, but we'll see if this works. This is by no means perfect. This is my first time doing this, so if it works at all, I'll be very happy. And if I made a slight mistake, so be it. I'll learn from my errors. However, yeah. So coming down, we've gone past the 06 blank. We've got the mask, which we saw connects to the latent noise mask. We got the 2 clips for the prompts for the masking that we're going to do. And down here we've got the VAE, which runs up to this VAE, but I think that should also run to this VAE over here. So we'll see whether or not this works and whether or not I need to put this right. Now, as for the masking part, if we come back to the load image, and if I right click on there and then select open in mask editor, you'll see here, it may not look quite so obvious, but I have already masked out the shoulders and this necklace here on this image. So this has already been masked, and all I did was draw that mask in and then save to node. And if I just cancel out of that, and so that's what you're seeing here. That's the mask that I've already created, and that's what the prompt is going to change. So now if we now look at that prompt, so I've input a tartan jumper on the positive prompt. So what we're hoping is on this task is we're going to change a jumper to a tartan jumper, just something as simple as that. Come across to the K sampler. Again, we're on a fixed seed of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30 steps, CFG 6, same sampler and scheduler, and I've gone for a denoise of 0.8, and that's about it. So what I'm going to do now is I think we're ready to give it a go and see if this works. So first of all, I'm going to disable this second task. So if I right click on that and then select set group nodes to never, that has disabled that task. I should mention, or I think it's worth mentioning, when I first did this, I had the buses included in this group, and then when I disabled the groups, I had no end of pain. So the bus node needed to come out of the group, and that's why it's not in any group there now. So let's see how we get on now. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to queue prompt and see if we get our young lady all dressed for Christmas. So let's give that a go by queue prompt. Okay, well, I think that worked quite nicely. So we now have our young lady all dressed for Christmas. Earrings have been turned into little Christmas baubles, etc., etc. Nice little Christmas jumper, nice scenic Christmas in the background. So that's worked quite well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to deactivate that group. So set group nodes to never. I'm now going to activate the masking group. Set group nodes to always. And let's give this a go. I'm a little bit skeptical because I think I've made an error there with the VAE, but let's give it a go and see what we get. So let's queue prompt. I'm glad to say that that worked too. So we have a young lady now, and she's now sporting a very nice tartan jumper, which is the result I was hoping for. Okay, so to finish off, just wanted to cover a couple of small points on ways that we could perhaps tidy up this workflow, just to finish off with. So just to try and tidy up our workflow a little bit visually anyway. So first of all, having the second instance of the AnyBus down here has been a great help. If I didn't do that, then all these connections would have been connected up here, and there would be an awful lot of wires. It'd be very difficult to work out how things are connected. So interlacing the AnyBus nodes has been very, very useful. Now, another thing, once you've got your workflows and they're up and running, do you really need to see these connections so much? Do they need to be so visible? Maybe not. Once you know that they're working, they're not particularly nice visually to look at. So one thing you can do, if you come across to your ComfyUI menu and click on the cogwheel, scroll down to the bottom of that, and you'll see this link render mode. Now you'll see that at the moment I'm on spline. If you were to change that to straight, for instance, once you make a change, just select close, and then if you then click anywhere empty on your workflow, you change the lines. So that's how you get to straight lines. So that again makes your workflow, once you've got it working how you want it, is visually better to look at. Alternatively, if you're not using the connections anymore, you don't need to see them anymore. So you can do the same things. If you come back up to your cogwheel, come back down to where you were, where you selected straight, you can select hidden. Select close, come across to an empty space and left click, and there you go. So you have a working workflow. You just don't need to see all the spaghetti nonsense. And I think that's about it. So I hope you found this interesting. I found the AnyBus node very useful, and I'll certainly be using it again. And yeah, so that just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time. Hope to see you at the next one. Have a good day, and goodbye.